Um, so, since I was 18, I explored becoming a zookeeper and had an internship at the Wildcat Sanctuary of Minnesota. I learned a lot there, and one of the critiques that they had of me was that I was just going through the motions. And reflecting on it, I realized that I probably loved zookeeping different from most of the people that had what it takes to spend years of their life making very little income in order to secure an actual job at a zoo. So internships for 2 years of zero pay is standard in the zookeeping industry. And I just found out sort of, okay, I want to try something else. Maybe this isn't the best idea for me. So I was exploring whether or not I wanted to become a college professor and got into a PhD program, and 2 years in dropped out with a master's degree, which is a long story, and I can go into it more. But at any rate, I currently work in a pacemaker battery factory, and it's been a little bit of a bumpy road, but I feel like I've thought of what I want to do with my education, and now I just have to stick the landing. Pintstein Limited Liability Corporation has a lot of potential to become something that public schools, and I think any school, but particularly public schools, don't quite have someone with the resources and education to give students a 3D printing tutorial and experience. I think public schools are the place where a lot of kids, and I've been substitute teaching in public schools, a lot of kids just don't like math. They don't find math exciting. And in order to design what they'll dream up, I don't know what they're going to dream up, but in order to design what they are going to dream up for 3D printing is a lot of math and, especially geometry. And I think that, I could have gone back to school for 2 years in order to become a high school teacher. It's actually going to take less time and resources for me to create a whole company and get to go around to all sorts of schools, make all sorts of connections, and really provide a service that I think schools are wanting. I have purchased 2 3D printers for $350 each. Those are 2 separate manufacturers. So the day when a school can afford a 3D printer is just around the corner. The problem is that learning how to use the software and learning how to maintain the equipment, and in some cases assemble the equipment, is a challenging hurdle, right? It's taking me months to overcome these hurdles, and a full-time teacher does not have months to devote to learning these resources. So as someone who's considered becoming a teacher and dropped out, I have abilities to fill a gap in the education economics of that whole system that I think I can make a profit that's at least equivalent to the profit that I currently make working in a pacemaker battery factory, which, by the way, is not bad work. I highly recommend it. If you're comfortable with repetitive work, you can email me, and I will give you specifics about how to get a job that pays $11 an hour or more. It only requires a high school degree. So. Any other questions?
Well, how did you get interested in 3D printing? I mean, when we talked before, your emphasis was on animals, and I know you did some work on animal behavior, and that you did some lab work with living organisms. What got you intrigued with this 3D printing?
Well, they're essentially rapid prototyping machines. You can make anything with a 3D printer, and so what I actually what I hear is, you know, that this model of, oh yeah, I have a 3D printer, I'll help you make whatever you want to make, is only a successful business model on a very limited scale. So the bread and butter of my business is going to have to be actually, hey, I made these products and toys. So I'm going to be making educational toys that are going to come from my passion about animals, biology, science. And the act of making those toys is going to make me a better educator, right? People are going to look at the devices that I've made and say, oh, I want to know how you did this, because I'm dreaming of, you know, something that I couldn't think of, right? Like, everybody is sort of their own genius. They are going to, you know, want to recruit me more for seeing how I pursued my passion of, you know, say, for instance, I print a high detail, you know, gorilla skull, right? Like all of the details that you would find in a large model, but I print one that's really nice, and it's you know, a keychain size, right? Like, maybe that's a product that I only wind up selling 5 in the world, right? And it doesn't pay for the design costs that I put into spending the time to make it, but someone looking at the fact that I could make it might generate enough business that you know, for my education services, that it the development time winds up paying off. So animals are involved, perhaps indirectly, and some of the really fun ways that animals are involved, I'll be willing to talk about in private after you sign a non-disclosure agreement. But yeah.
Well, I remember in our first conversation, you were very proud of the fact that you had developed a 90-second toy for polar bears, frozen. Yeah. A frozen toy that took them a whole 90 seconds to destroy.
Yeah, yeah.
So it seems as if this idea of, you know, toy ideas was kind of percolating back then.
Yeah, toys are crucial, and to enjoyment of life, right? Like, life just isn't good if you're not finding something worth playing around with. Which is why I was making toys for polar bears, is to improve their quality of life. But toys are also important for innovation. What I really want to make with my toys is something for humans that, you know, simplifies complex concepts, right? Sort of inspires people to investigate more, and you don't need a lot of education to hold these things in your hand and, look at them and go, oh, I wonder if, to go back to the gorilla keychain example, I wonder what this, big ridge on the top of their head, it's called the sagittal crest. Maybe having the keychain would make someone, research what that sagittal crest is, which is for their jaw muscles. They can chew through very impressive things like bamboo by having huge masseter muscles that are anchored onto the sagittal crest. So that's an example of a way that a very simple toy that someone could hold in their hands might inspire investigation.
So let me see if I get at least one wing of this project right. You're interested in developing toys.
Yes.
And also in encouraging, say, middle school children to think of toys or think of things they want to do and develop those.
Yes.
And prototype them using 3D printers.
Exactly.
So you want to sort of demonstrate that it's fun by producing things like the gorilla skull yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then you want to say to the kids, okay, what ideas do you have?
Mm-hmm.
And provide the expertise to get them up and running with cheap 3D printers.
Yes.
So that they can actually do some of the things they think about.
Exactly.
And your profit stream would be partly from any toy you develop that actually catches on.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to catch on.
No.
Because if you sell the idea of thinking of toys and things like toys, models,
Mm-hmm.
then the kids, then that enthusiasm will be actually what you're selling.
Yes.
Is that the picture?
Yeah,
of what
yeah.
You're up to?
I am selling products and services. And actually, if you go to my website right now, I offer both products and services. My website right now doesn't have anything about 3D printing up. I'm hoping to actually receive my first 3D printer this week, which is pretty exciting. But it will take me at least 3 weeks, if not months, to get to the point where I'd be available to come to a school. So I'll be available for the fall semester. I'm not going to be able to get this up and running fast enough to be available to anything other than, summer camp or, that time frame. July is my target date for putting out a wide range of products that people will look at and they'll be like, wow, you made all of these with that printer? You could do anything. Mm-hmm. So that's my goal, is to, by July, have an internet presence that really makes people look at it and be like, you could do anything. I could do anything.
Yeah.
Which I think is an experience schools will pay for.
So, can you say a bit about the kind of experimentation that you've done with making things that's led up to this? I mean, it sounds like it's the product of a long period.
Oh, yeah.
Fooling around with various ideas.
Yeah, I think a concise example of the broad range of experiences I've had with making things was my father and I made a solar boat in his basement, just, because there was a solar boat race that was happening and he felt it was fun, right? He's not an engineer. He's a medical doctor, right? My brother's an architect. I've just kind of grown up always with this attitude of like, yeah, if a human can do it, I can probably figure out how to do it. The question is just how much time does it take me, right? Like how much time is it going to take me to teach myself how to do something? And how much, is it going to cost me to pay someone who already knows how to do it?
Yeah. So, I mean, you could do this sort of make your own things push.
Yeah.
With a lot of different ways, with a lot of different materials, with a lot of different technologies, and
Definitely.
wondering why you settled on 3D printing as the interesting one.
Well, I know people that make armor for a living, make medieval armor for a living. I can't outcompete them. I know people that make clothing for a living. I can't outcompete them. I know people that make pottery for a living. I can't outcompete them. I only tangentially know some people doing 3D printing for a living. And they didn't provide customer service as thorough as I wanted to receive customer service. So I think that's the market for me to break into. It's possible that I'll learn that I can't outcompete the people already in this market, but it's a small market that's growing rapidly, which in ecology, that's the best place to be, is when the population is small and growing.
Yeah. So your work with biology has in some ways paid off.
Yes. No. I have a extensive education in behavioral ecology, which is essentially optimal decision making. If I went to an economics organization or a marketing organization and said, I know how to do marketing or economics because I know behavioral ecology. They wouldn't believe me. But I think people looking at my business are going to be like, how does he know about, economics and marketing? It's because I studied how organisms make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So.
The reason you're working with 3D printing is that it's the sort of place where you might actually end up being the best in the business.
Yeah, Shapeways.com has a really solid, I guess I'll call it a fort, right? Like, I don't know that I can overcome the Shapeways momentum to become the best in the business. But I certainly think that my designs can be sold on Shapeways.com. My printing services can be sold on 3dhub.com in a way that's going to, be like, yeah, you've got your slice of the pie. Like, you don't have all the pie, but you've got your slice of the pie, and it's going to be there, for the rest of your life. Like I think Pintstein.com might become profitable enough that it's my last career. I've had a sickening number of attempts at developing a career. And I think I finally might have found one that I can make stick.
So, with regard to designing a toy, let's take this gorilla head we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how's one proceed? You make it happen on a
computer.
3D printer.
Yeah.
So then you have, as it were, the software program to generate it. Do you sell the software program or do you sell a little gorilla head?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. So it's called a .stl file, and you can sell. So you can give Shapeways a .stl file, and they will sell a physical object, right? And you will get a cut for having designed the .stl file for everyone that orders a physical object. I am not aware of anyone that sells a .stl file. Thingiverse offers free .stl files. So it's sort of like a Wikipedia for physical objects, right? And, free open source. Anybody can go to Thingiverse, take something down from Thingiverse, look at it, play with it, modify it, and print it, or print it without modification. And so, you don't need a high level of education to make complicated objects. You could be essentially doing the equivalent of printing out pages from Wikipedia, and then sticking them in a book and calling it an encyclopedia. Let's see. I have some ideas about how I can contribute to Thingiverse, but right now I'm really kind of focusing on, okay, how am I going to make products that will generate, enough revenue where I can quit my day job. I feel like once I get to the point where it's like, yeah, I'm doing good. I've got, $1,000 a week of revenue. That'll be the point where it's like, okay, I can quit my day job, and maybe I have enough free time and resources to just, put a handful of things up on Thingiverse for free. .stl files. Let's see. So as far as selling physical objects, I do intend to offer physical objects through eBay and sorry, brain fart. It's not Pinterest. I keep thinking of the word Pinterest. Etsy. Etsy.com, right? Like those are two websites that sell physical objects. And yeah, sure, why not throw out objects that I have printed, from my designs on eBay store and an Etsy store. See how much money I can make. I don't know. It doesn't cost much to do the attempt. So it's 3D printing is a really interesting conversion, right? So in economics, you can talk about a bit market and an atoms market. So in a bits market, like for instance Wikipedia, right? It costs very little to reproduce everything that you've designed, right? So you can essentially give away your designs for free and expect to make money through something else, right? Like, because the cost of giving your bits away for free is close to zero. So charging people zero is an option. And in an atoms market, we haven't quite figured out how to do that yet. And 3D printing is a really weird mixture of the bits and the atoms market, right? So, like, if you need to go buy a coat hanger, right? Like, that's an atoms market thing. The design for being able to make your own coat hanger with your own printer is not an atoms thing, right? Like, the resources that you're going to put into your printer is an atoms market thing, but the design for the 3D printing is not. So the economics of 3D printing gets really interesting for melding two areas that currently have different economic rules, right?
Well, I mean, one thing that I think about here is you eliminate, for the kind of thing you're talking about, you eliminate the need to carry inventory.
Yes. Definitely.
I mean, if I say, okay, I do a show called The Bat of Minerva,
Mm-hmm.
I want a special pin that everybody who watches the show can wear that will identify him or her to other show watchers.
As a Batman.
But I don't know whether I have 5 viewers or 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I put in an order for 5. The printer prints up 5.
Yep.
Or I put in, or I buy, or alternatively I buy or download a bat, buy my own printer, print 5, and then if I get 5,000 orders, I print 5,000.
Yep. The only inventory that you need to worry about with plastic 3D printing right now is the filament. Do you have enough filament of the right colors? And that simplifies your product inventory dramatically. And there are plenty of businesses that are already trying to do this. I have competitors, but it also seems to me like the market is ripe for every competitor to make what they need to be making in order to not have lost, to not have a business die, right? Like, there's going to be a good period of time where no 3D printing is going to be going extinct, or eventually we'll hit a point where we are in competition, and then Shapeways might make us all go out of business. But I think there's years before that happens.
I remember my first computer, which was an Osborne.
Hmm.
Do you know about the Osborne?
I've never heard of it, no.
The Osborne computer was just about the coolest gadget ever invented. Blew everything Steve Jobs just entirely out of the water.
Okay. I played with an Apple II.
Well, the Osborne would do everything you needed. I mean, it had software to do pretty much everything from business to games. It looked like a sewing machine.
Mm-hmm.
But if you'd never been able to carry around that level of power, it was tremendous.
Mm-hmm.
And because, for some reason, very, very fast. I don't think Word is near Word now on a Mac is as fast as WordStar was on the Osborne. It was just a miracle.
Yeah. I do remember that from the Apple II, where you'd be like, click, click, click. Oh, all right, there it is.
So, and the thing retailed at a phenomenal price. But our first Osborne was $1,800.
Yeah.
Which in those days was real money.
Yeah.
And but the thing was that everybody all over the place was trying to do this, packaging the pieces into a portable computer, and IBM was just kind of waiting on the sidelines to see what got developed, and then a combination of IBM and Bill Gates kind of finished them all off.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like
So
you're in that development phase.
Exactly. And but I think the real question to ask is, how much money did the Osborne?
Yeah.
How much money did the Osborne Corporation invest, right, to make their product? And how much money did they make from selling their product? So do the people at the Osborne Corporation regret those decisions? Right now, I don't regret any of my investments. And there is a lot of potential to, turn this around and say, okay, yeah, maybe Shapeways ran me out of business. But what I did for those years wasn't an economic loss, and it radically improved my annual income, right? If I work in this pacemaker factory 40 hours a week for 52 weeks a year, I will make $27,000. How much more can I make, right? Like, there's a lot of potential for improvement there. So it doesn't take that much investment in order to have paid off by showing people, yeah, I'm a PhD dropout with a master's degree, and the reason I dropped out could be to do with my ability to conduct research. I don't think it is, but at any rate, you could say I have a black mark on my resume. But look at all this other stuff that I just did. You want to hire me. And so I think that I could be in that Osborne situation and still win.
Yeah. As long as what you're doing is fun. I'll bet the
Yes.
Osborne people had more fun
Oh yes.
than Bill Gates has ever had.
Yeah. And actually, the back of my business card has an Einstein quote that says, if success is A, right, like in an equation, then A equals X plus Y plus Z, and Y is play, right, which is fun, and that's why, play is in the equation for success. So, yeah, no, I'm definitely having fun. You could view this as a hobby, but I think it's going to be, profit.
Well, let me check out one thing. I mean, what I do every week, about twice a week, is make soup. Because my mother makes soup, and she put me onto the idea that if you always have a soup,
You always have food.
yeah, and you don't have to think about it except once a week, and you don't have to think much that once a week, because
I do a similar thing with my cooking.
and so, but then of course I get tired of the soup, so I begin doing little tweaks to the soup, and I, change the meat, or I change the tomato base or something to see if I can't get it less tiresome by the last jar.
Yes, definitely.
You don't want to dread eating the last jar of soup.
Yes, definitely.
Well, partly, as I think about it, I think, Now, my sister lives in Texas, and she's an expert on cooking. And it would be fun to have her play with my soup a little bit sometime. And then, add some things and, see what she could do with this thing. And now, of course, she could come, or she could send me an email or whatever. But it would be really fun if I had a 3D printer for soup.
And someone has actually made that.
Really?
Yeah, I don't have any intention to buy it, but it's remarkable the number of materials that people are trying to figure out how to 3D print. Part of why I tried to give you the hook of, that this is really the insane idea that utopia is possible, is that it seems to me like the end of this progression is something along the lines of the replicator from Star Trek: The Next Generation, where Jean-Luc Picard walks into his room and says, "Earl Grey, hot," and the computer just prints the tea right there for him. And the thing is that they could print anything, right? And so what they wind up doing with that ability to print any object that they can imagine is, on Earth, there is no more poverty, right? Like, everyone has access to cold fusion and replicator technology in the Star Trek universe. So war and poverty were eliminated, right? We don't believe that that's possible anymore, but maybe 3D printing is a pathway. And I want to live in a world where people believe that utopia is possible,
Yeah. Well, if you could, the key thing seems to be to get, if you just stick to the funny little plastic,
That's what's cheap right now. Yeah.
And you could get it, if you could get that stuff to be fully recyclable.
A PLA is... I don't know enough to make
But I'm just thinking, there are lots of things that you don't need them to last very long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you could get them for as long as you need them and then turn them back into raw material,
Yeah.
they wouldn't be cluttering up the world.
Yeah, and a plastics engineer can probably make a much more useful statement about this, but when I was taking organic chemistry, I tried to teach myself how to recycle plastic. We got to pick an independent project, and that was something that excited me. And the reaction that I was doing in order to take a Coke bottle and turn it into the material that you use to synthesize a Coke bottle was a 5% yield. So there are probably other solutions and better solutions, but my knowledge of plastic recycling is that you lose a lot of material. So, utopia through recycling plastic, possible, but it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah. So, when you think about the toys, the things you might make, the things you might encourage other people to make, is your horizon at this point this plastic stuff?
Those are the two machines that I'm going to own for the foreseeable future. I have a hard time foreseeing past October. But yeah, I personally would love to own one of the machines that can print metal, and one of the two printers that I ordered has a retrofit package that I might purchase that allows it to print metal. And I would also love to have the 3D printer that allows someone to print an organ. But that's probably 5 years down the road for me.
You mean an organ?
Yes, like there are not enough kidneys on the market for people that need a kidney. And so people are developing the technology necessary in order to print you a kidney for you, right? Like to basically make this thing that is going to be what you need it to be. And my knowledge of developmental biology, I think, would allow me to direct my company in productive venues, but that's an expensive machine, and honestly the machine is going to be a lot better cost to benefit ratio in 5 years. So
that's exciting. So
yeah,
and of course in between there are all the one. Have you fooled around? How close to real are the Mission Impossible masks? The really great masks.
Real? So you're talking about a plastic
I'm sure.
thing?
I presume the CIA has them.
You're talking about a plastic thing, or you're talking about real skin?
Well, I'm thinking about not something in between, something that isn't obviously a mask.
Yeah, things that are not obviously a mask are real. That, right? Hollywood made a real mask, right, for that scene in Mission Impossible. So that was a real thing. You can make a very complicated structure on your face that has been it is difficult to distinguish from real tissue, and you can pull it off. So
the ultimate gorilla suit.
The ultimate gorilla suit. Yeah.
Yeah, and are these things is that sort of printer becoming available to anybody but Hollywood?
I haven't looked into that material, but I would fathom the answer is yes, that somebody's figured out how to melt or otherwise have that material synthesize when you combine two products. 3D printing, right, is basically this complicated machine that just takes a material and then goes, okay, we're putting a drop of it here, putting a drop of it here, a drop of it here, and it's basically just going around, and then eventually you have a three-dimensional object, and it's reasonable to describe 3D printing is just 2D printing over and over again, right? Like it's just 2D printing with the ability to go, and now we go up.
It's fascinating. So, I mean, the thing I can imagine middle school students wanting to play around with is their appearance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably.
And so, if you say, well, how do you want to look?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And,
yeah.
do you want to look different every day?
I mean, I bet that having, a different prosthetic, rubber type thing that you're going to glue onto your face every day would be expensive. But, there probably is a point, 10 years down the line where somebody does that,
Right. That would be very interesting. Yeah. And so you'd have all these. I mean, I have a poodle,
Mm-hmm.
and the funny thing about the poodle is like it's two dogs in one. It becomes this little teddy bear.
Mm.
You take it to clip, and I swear they could switch dogs on me every time they clip it. I'd never know. It's such a different dog.
Mm-hmm. Behavioral wise, or just appearance?
Well, my whole reaction to it, I mean, it still does what it does.
Yes. Yeah,
It's a little colder when it's clipped, and it's kind of traumatized for a few days about the clipping.
Mm-hmm.
But it's my response to it. It's this little masculine, aggressive bear turning into this frou-frou thing,
Mm-hmm.
from one day to, from 1 minute, 3 hours. So you can imagine if people could transform as radically as poodles
Mm-hmm.
and see the responses.
Well, and I think actors know that people already can transform as radically as poodles. But, you're talking about a purely appearance.
Oh yeah, when you
transformation.
start getting acting into
Yeah.
the process. I remember Gwyneth Paltrow talking about Shallow Hal.
Mm.
It's one great underrated movie.
Yeah, no, I love it. One of Jack Black's best movies.
But in Shallow Hal, she talks about putting on the fat suit and going down to the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And, so you have this supremely thin and beautiful person becoming balloony,
Mm-hmm.
and just what happens to people's response to her.
Yeah.
All sorts of things to play with.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the more that you play around with things like that, the more that you'll actually teach other people that, appearance is meaningless.
Yes.
Right? That it's the behavior that truly matters.
Yeah.
But as Jack Black learns in that movie, right?
Right.
That he doesn't care how she appears once the weird hypnosis thing falls off of him.
Yeah.
That he's found a woman that he loves. So he doesn't care that she doesn't look like the cover of a magazine.
It would be so much fun to have a classroom full of little Yodas. Confronting the teacher on the first day with their little pointy ears.
My girlfriend would very much enjoy dressing up a baby like a Yoda.
Yes. Or alternatively, it's a little joke in the maternity ward. Bring the mother or no baby with the little ears.
Yeah.
Yeah, emergency, delivery room.
You must present me my baby with this costume.
Or on the other hand, the mother hasn't seen the baby until it doesn't know what it looked like.
Yeah.
You gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. For nurses who don't intend to keep their job a long time but want to have some fun.
Well, or for a day when people have more of a sense of humor.
Right.
Yeah,
one hopes for that day, and I know that your inventions, whatever they end up being, will hasten that day.
Yeah.
So thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you.